Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and do some more, I guess, predator patterning, or we could call it hog patterning or deer patterning or anything. I guess I might just call it welcome back to some devastating patterns, because I have a feeling that today's combination that we got out here is going to give us a pretty insanely ridiculous looking pattern. I really have high hopes for how this is going to perform, especially after seeing what we saw last week out of these particular shells and setup, and now we've got a little different choke, so this should be pretty impressive. But as for the shell I've got here today, big thank you to Keith and the guys over at Salt Creek for sending some of these over. Not sponsored, not partnered or anything. They just make a good shell and wanted to see me try some of their stuff, so they sent over some of these. These are some Salt Creek triple threat shells. They are a 12 gauge, 3-inch, 2-ounce payload of TSS T shot, moving about 1,250 feet per second. And a while back, we did test some of the triple threat in number 4 TSS, and that was super impressive. And last week, we tested one of these TSS T shot shells through an improved cylinder choke in the 1187, and it was pretty ridiculous to say the least. And with today's choke, and based on what a lot of people are saying and kind of what the Salt Creek website suggests and stuff like that, this should give us a pretty insane pattern. So we know we've got a good shell, but how's it going to do through today's setup? And as for the setup we've got here today, I brought out the Remington 1187, but I put in the factory stock modified choke in the gun. Now on Salt Creek's website, it suggests a modified choke. Keith said these tend to perform really well in the improved cylinder to modified choke range, and they did very well through the improved cylinder. But if they somehow manage to get even better than what we saw last week through this modified choke, it's going to be pretty ridiculous. So definitely curious to see what this choke can actually do with these shells. And as for today's test, we're going to run it the same as we always do with like your buckshot patterns and stuff like that. I've got the big sheet of paper set up at 40 yards. I've got the chronograph so we can get our velocity out of the shell, and I've got a few templates that we can lay up over our target for some better reference points as well. So enough talking, let's get you guys a view of this target and take this shot and just see what kind of absolute destruction we can get when we run these Salt Creek TSS Ts through this modified choke. Okay, so that shell gave us 1,077 through the chrono. The boss claim is 1,250. However, what we have been seeing out of these triple threat shells seems to be right at 1,100 or low 1,100s. I believe last week when we tested these through the improved cylinder choke, they were like 1,120 or something like that. So based on our previous results, this is pretty realistic for these shells, it would seem, but it is a little bit lower than their box claim. Either way, right at about 1,100 feet per second with TSS Ts is still going to be plenty enough energy down there at 40 yards on whatever you would need it for. But what kind of a pattern did it actually give us down at 40 yards? Let's go check it out and see what we got. Alright, so now we're down here at our 40-yard paper, and this is what we got. And I gotta say, that is nothing short of super impressive. A nice centered up shot. Everything is right there in a nice central group. Nice spread, not blown all over the place, not super sporadic. That is devastating, to say the least. Now, we have 48 total pellets on the paper here, which I believe should be all of the load. And I did measure it, and we do have one flyer over here on the left. If we measure, including that one, the total group size is right at 20 inches. But if we exclude that one flyer and measure the actual main portion of your group, it's right at 18¼ inches. So that is very, very impressive, and definitely an improvement over what we saw through the improved cylinder choke as well. So I don't think you can really ask for a whole lot better than that. That would get the job done on anything from your varmints like groundhogs or something all the way up into your deer size game. Some areas or states it may not be legal to use T-shot for bigger game like deer, but if it is legal, a TSS T is absolutely going to carry enough energy. I mean, you're up there in buckshot territory with these pretty easily. So that right there is very, very impressive. But let's throw a couple templates up on the paper and really get a little better reference point as to how they did in the grand scheme of things. Alright, so let's start off here with our 10-inch circle, and if we put it right in our core area of the pattern, which was nice and centered up in today's test, it gave us a total of 30 pellets within that 10-inch circle at 40 yards. That is over half the load. We have 48 pellets in the entire load, and 30 of them are all within a 10-inch circle. So that is very, very impressive. And it's not just one tiny little golf ball group or just a big string of them or something like that. It is a pretty uniform spread throughout the vast majority of that 10-inch circle. So that would absolutely hammer whatever you're trying to hit with it at 40 yards. There's no question about that. You have over half the load in the average vital sized area, even down to your coyote sized animals. So very impressive there, but how would it look in some actual hunting scenarios? Let's start off with the deer template for those of you that would hunt deer with this shell, and we'll see what that looks like. Alright, so here's your deer template, and if we line it up with the point of aim there, we have literally the entire load on the deer. Every pellet in that shell would have hit that deer in some way, shape, or form. So that is very, very impressive, and as you can see, everything is condensed right through that vitals area. You don't have a ton of flyers or strings or a blown open pattern that is getting rid of a bunch of meat all over the place or anything like that. If you tuck that right behind that shoulder, right through the lungs, that's going to absolutely crush that deer. And you're keeping all of your pellets in a nice condensed area. So yeah, I don't think that deer would have gone very far, if anywhere at all, to be honest with you. So I don't know that it can get much better than that out of this shell. That is very, very good looking, very impressive. But I also do have the hog template out here for those of you hog hunters that would use this shell, which is probably more so what I would use it for, is the coyotes to hogs type of range. They are more than capable of taking a deer, but I would probably stick to coyotes and hogs personally. So for those of you that would use this shell on a hog hunt, let's put that template up here and see what you guys would be looking at. Alright, and here's that hog template, and as you can see, nothing short of impressive there as well. Everything right through the vital area, and you have 98% of your shot actually on the hog. So yeah, he's not going very far, if anywhere at all, on you. So nothing short of impressive performance here today for these shells, and that just goes to show why I think these are probably one of their best selling shells, because I think they're already out of stock at the time I'm filming this video again. So if this is a shell that you would like to test out, or you would like to take out hunting or something, then I'd keep an eye out for when they're in stock, because they definitely seem to be worth it, that's for sure. So can't complain one bit about this kind of performance today, and who knows, maybe we run them through another little bit different choke or something if one of you guys wants to see something in particular, and see if maybe we might even be able to get a little bit tighter than that. I don't know that we will be able to, but who knows. But at the end of the day here, that's a result you just cannot argue with one bit. Okay, and here's the wad out of that shell, and as you can see, it is just the typical wad they use in these triple threat shells. There's not really anything fancy about it, but it is pretty stiff. There's nothing stuck down in there except the little cork piece that they use. But what I am seeing is just a little bit of damage starting on the petals of these wads. A little bit of snagging. You can see maybe a couple of those little pinholes right there starting. Definitely nothing of too much concern or anything, but this tells me that with these really large TSS pellets that are in that shell, modified might be about the constriction limit that we might want to push these to before we start actually really damaging the wad or throwing or scattering the pattern all over the place or something like that. So modified might be about the constriction we can get to. Either way though, the wad still looks perfectly fine, all things considered, and I clearly think it did its job like it was supposed to. So nothing too out of the ordinary or strange to see here. Alright y'all, well, what do you think about that result right there? That is complete and utter devastation. I expected to see a little bit better out of this modified choke, and I would say that we were pretty well correct. I don't know that we can realistically get much better than that, considering they are a pretty large TSS pellet. I don't know that we can really choke them down anymore without causing damage to the wad or disrupting the pattern or anything like that. But in reality, I don't really know that we need to choke them down any more than that. I mean, if you really wanted to for one reason or another, that could be a turkey pattern technically. With the overall size of that, it would be quite a bit of overkill for them, but I'm sure there's somebody out there that would try it. But as always, leave your thoughts in the comments. Is that about what you expected to see? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any of the triple threat shells? And if so, what kind of results have you seen? Would you hunt with that kind of a pattern? And if so, would you keep it in the varmint predator range, or would you actually take it out after some hogs or deer or something like that? And is there another choke or setup combo that you want to see us try with these shells? Let me know all that down below. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we got the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox, or you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.